1 Corinthians 1:7. Hoste humas me husteresthai en medeni charismati apekdechomenus tein apokalypsin tu kuriu hemon Jesu Christu. As Paul continues in verse 7, he begins with hoste. Hoste is indicative of a result clause, and there are two kinds of results in Greek. There are what are called natural results, which pattern with the infinitive, and there are actual results, which pattern with a finite verb, whether indicative, subjunctive, or optative. So that's how this ought to be translated, with the result that humas. Now, because husteresthai is an infinitive, we have what's called a natural result. That means what follows is the natural consequence of the previous idea. An actual result, by contrast, says what really truly happened. So it's not as though the natural result rules out some actual occurrence, but the emphasis is on the natural consequence of the previous action. So the result is that you do not lack, me husteresthai. Now, because this is not a finite verb, in particular not an indicative, we don't use u, but me. That's the Greek convention. U is only used with the indicative, me is used with the other moods and types of verbs. So the result is that you do not lack en medeni charismati, for no grace. Now notice the use of the double negative in Greek, which is in fact quite common and emphatic. So me medeni, you don't lack for no grace. We might say rather awkwardly, you don't lack for any grace. Because this is an infinitive, its subject must be accusative. The subjects of infinitives are always accusative, both in Greek and Latin. You do not lack for any grace. Now there is a modifier for humas, namely apekdechomenus. Apekdechomenus, there is the middle ending. It's masculine, plural, and accusative, and it's modifying humas. What kind of you are they? Well, they are apekdechomenus, having received. This is a participle, and it is in the present tense, and it is in the middle voice. How do we know that it's middle? Well, as it turns out, this verb, apekdechomai, is a deponent verb. And when we see tein apokalypsin, we realize that apekdechomenus is middle. And here's the reason. There are three voices in Greek, active, middle, and passive. This ending can be either middle or passive, but it cannot be active. So the active is ruled out. Now, oftentimes people will students will identify a Greek form as middle passive. But of course, that is a misnomer. Every given verb form and participle form must be either middle or passive. It cannot be both. So although the middle and passive share an ending in most instances, any given form has to be one or the other. So how do we know that this one is middle? Well, it's simple. Namely, a participle as a verbal adjective can have an object, but it can only have an object if it is active or middle voice. It cannot take an object if it's passive. And so because tein apokalypsin is clearly the object of the participle apekdechomenus, then we can conclude definitively that apekdechomenus is middle. So the result is that you lack for no grace, inasmuch as you have received. We'll take this as causal, because you have received the revelation of the Lord, our Lord, Jesus Christ. This genitive is objective with tein apokalypsin. This one is possessive with tu kuriu, and this is an appositive restating tu kuriu.